A cargo ship from Thailand is struck by a projectile in the Strait of Hormuz. This all happened yesterday as Iran is launching fresh attacks in the Middle East waters. The regime also joining Hezbollah, both firing simultaneously toward Israel.
Our chief foreign correspondent Trey Yingst joins us from Israel with more. Trey.
Yeah, hey, Brian, good morning. Two tankers off the coast of Iraq in the Persian Gulf were hit by the Iranians overnight. Some dramatic video showing these tankers on fire as the crews were reportedly evacuated with one person killed. This is taking place as the Iranians are using what's left of their navy to try and target vessels in the Persian Gulf and put pressure as this war continues. We know that CENTCOM is going after many of the vessels that the Iranians have left in their navy, but they're still able to get off some of these attacks. Also further south in Oman, the Iranians used a drone to hit an oil storage facility. This is the largest in their country. Flames rising from that storage facility just yesterday. Again, the Iranians going after many of these locations, but President Trump speaking out about the oil markets, saying this.
And my administration, as you know better than anybody, is also working to keep the oil flowing. It's flowing all over. We knocked out, they want to drop some mines, very friendly people, mines, so boats blow up. And we knocked out as of, every hour I have to change because they knock them out so fast. I've never seen anything. Think of it. They knocked out 54 ships in 2 days, and they're real ships.
With a focus on the Persian Gulf, we're also looking at the situation in Lebanon, where overnight the Iran-backed Lebanese militant group launched more than 100 rockets into northern Israel. An IDF official telling Fox News this was the largest attack by Hezbollah since the war began. The Israelis immediately responded with a series of airstrikes, not just around the Dakhla neighborhood of southern Beirut, but also Hezbollah launching positions across Lebanon. This taking place as a top spokesperson for the Israeli military said this.
Hezbollah is under pressure today. It works for its Iranian master. It acts contrary to the Lebanese interest. It not only does not defend Lebanon, it harms Lebanon. We see the statements of Lebanon's government leaders. It harms the state of Lebanon.
Man, all I gotta say is, man, aren't you happy you in the United States of America with all that's going on over there in the Middle East? Because, man, they got rockets, man, shooting up everything. And that is for sure. Iran is not giving up. I don't know what the United States intelligence was thinking that this was going to be so simple. This is not a Venezuela. I'm going to say that for sure. This is not a Venezuela, because it seems like this can go on all year long until they finally just settle down. It don't matter with regards to the missiles. I think what's going to end up having to happen in Iran is not only are they not going to be able to have any nuclear weapons, but they're not going to be able to have a military. And the people that is going to be guarding the straits are necessarily the United States, of course, and Saudi Arabia. I don't necessarily think that, it would be impressionable for Israel to be a part of it. But Israel has, some say they're going to be involved in it any way it goes. However, this war is a lot bigger than what was initialized when we got into this whole idea of Operation Epic Fury. It's because it's becoming dragged out. It's becoming to a point to where to win the war, it's seeming like we're wanting to attack the energy infrastructure. However, that would be a bad idea, because it's just poor thinking to think that it will not have an effect on a civilian population when all you necessarily want to do. And I didn't think that it was going to be a regime change at first, but accordingly it's going to be. But who are the peoples that are going to be in power, right? You talking about going in here and trying to change the dynamics of an entire culture of leadership. And this leadership has been there for about 50 years. This is a big job. Let's go.
We have some video of those strikes the Israelis conducted in the minute after that rocket barrage that targeted northern Israel, injuring at least 2 people. You can see in these videos here, they are launching extensive airstrikes across Lebanon, not just in Beirut. What was interesting, guys, overnight is that this rocket fire came from very close to the Israeli border, an area where there were Israeli ground troops just a few months ago. And so this is an indication that Hezbollah has been able to push some of their terrorists further south of the Litani River and launch more attacks against Israel. We expect intense airstrikes to target Beirut in the hours ahead. As the Israelis say today, they are targeting positions in Iran and also Lebanon. Guys?
It seemed like Thailand was the first to actually go over there in an attempt to go through the straits and got they blew up. You got handed to them a little bit, man. And it's the reason why so many other countries is not trying to take their ships through them straits at the moment. Not surprisingly, though, is Iranian trying to destroy its own, its own oil reserve or its own oil plants, its own refineries and stuff like that. That's pretty much not surprising, because one thing could expect was Donald Trump to not go after those and wanting to primarily just attack all the other energy plants, you know what I'm saying? Not the pipelines, but them energy plants provide, things like, heating, which allows people to cook food, with stoves, but also it provides, stuff for the industries like, steel, concrete, and manufacturing. You know what I'm saying? But who it was going to hardest affect was the elderly and the children within Iran. And there's where you become have a problem, to where the man will have to step up and make a decision. And there will be a lot more lives lost if these energy plants will get knocked out. So you don't want to necessarily cause a problem when it comes to knocking out all these energy plants, to where you're kind of becoming just like the the Iranians to beat the Iranians. That would be a crazy idea. But if economically, think of it from a standpoint that United States and Israel got into this, they had to figure a way up out of it, right? They had to figure a way up out of it, as the United States citizens are beginning to see that this is starting to hit fuel prices. Because right now, in the city of Los Angeles, there are some areas where I've seen for myself, I ain't talking about what I've seen on the news, that gas is beginning to creep up to $7. And thankfully, man, I got multiple vehicles, right? So I'm not pretty much worried about gas prices. I kind of want to put some E85 lines in my car, or at least one of them. So when stuff like this happen, I can stay low. It don't cost that much, but the fuel is what's going to hit the American citizens the most. Energy is important to any country, because with energy you have so much. This is why the United States is trying to be so energy dominant. And I don't know how China is going to get through this when 90% of the oil comes from Iran. But accordingly, you want to make an attempt to try to control Iran, because control China with the deportation, I want to say, of Iranians' oil into China, because it just keeps China in control with their influence. China is losing a lot of ground with regards to its ability to manufacture and keep itself afloat if they don't have enough energy, because China got billions of people, and one of their deterrents from being attacked from any country are its people. So they got to take care of those people. You know what I'm saying? And with the loss of manufacturing already, that has developed since Donald Trump has came into office. They have already been hurt. With the loss of Venezuela, they're being hurt. And they've been giving out loans to gain influence into these countries, such as Iran, to where it's like China is going to be hurting. They try to develop BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, Iran, and China. These are the primary, stakeholders into the whole BRICS, which is to challenge the American dollar. And so when Iran begin to terrorize their people, here you have a way for the United States to actually go up in here to check China, to check BRICS and things like that. So Iranians, terrorizing their own civilian population, just like Saddam Hussein, just like Gaddafi. There's always a reason when you challenge the American dollar for us to go in and come get you somehow, some way.
Thank you, Trey.
Thanks so much, Trey. It goes to show you the Lebanese army's got to do something. They can't be everywhere. I'm talking about the Israelis. Meanwhile, Trey, stay with us because I just want to give everyone at home a sense of who this paramilitary security force is. Dressed in plain clothes, oftentimes on motorcycle. They're called the Bashis. And this paramilitary group has headquarters, we think, roughly based here. The red marks are the places that we've actually attacked. And this is what I think is directly related to Prime Minister Netanyahu, Israelis too, coming out and saying, get ready to take back your country. You can't do it when you have this police force amongst you who are sitting there with force and with guns who are going to shoot you if you protest. They're the ones who pile up the bodies in the streets of people when they want to just have a say in their government and they're upset they can't get any water or their currency is worthless.
So, what do the United States or what do Israel plan to do? Is they going to give these civilians some type of weaponry, or are they going to have to go after these individuals with pipes and chains and stuff like that? It's not to say that it can't happen because it happened to Gaddafi. And, the civilian population is who actually killed Gaddafi, right? And he was the leader of Libya, right? So it's not like it can't happen, but we're talking about going. As a matter of fact, these people can identify who these individuals are more than anybody else, probably more than the United States at this moment. But we're not talking about just one person. We're talking about a bunch of people who he's talking about, the besieged headquarters. So Israel is telling these people to go get ready to take back over their country because I don't consider sending ground troops up in here is a good idea. That'd be like another Vietnam type ordeal going on with regards to this. So that would be horrible for United States citizens because, it's going to be so many of our countrymen lost from going over there trying to fight. When the battle is basically already won, what the United States is trying to do is establish a government who they can talk to that will not be able to develop a nuclear weapon again. But I would consider that they shouldn't be allowed to build up a navy, at least a navy, to keep them from this whole idea of controlling the straits.
Who's the head of the besiege? He's dead. This is some great news. Azadollah Badfar, he was killed over the last 2 days. This was confirmed by the Defense of Democracies, and it was also confirmed by the Israelis. They're not confirmed by the Iranians yet, but they don't like to admit this. Look for a big funeral in his response. What is their symbol? This goes to show you their symbol. These men and these guys actually made their name and the human waves that used to run, just the men, used to run at the Iraqi tanks during the Iran-Iraq war. That was where the besieged made its name. And that's why these ruthless guys who are ideologues to the nth degree and severe Islamic extremists will crack down ruthlessly on the average everyday Iranian who just wants to say in their government.
Look what it says. It says, The RFS responsible for civilian defense and social control. Yeah, that seemed like they need to get taken out. So when Israel's talking about come back and take over your country, get ready to take your country back, they talking about come get rid of the individuals right there.
Government. Here's a look at how they get their guys. They look at people sold on this mission, and they recruit mostly young men into it. And they consist primarily of working class men who just want to actually subscribe to the extremist religion.
And that's why necessarily you don't want to knock out their energy infrastructure if these young men are going to be more willing to participate in a fight in the United States, against the United States and Israel, when they have to look at their grandparents, their little brothers, and probably, the women in their family not being able to, being traumatized by this whole situation.
Can you say about them? Without them, the Iranians could rise up. What are they? A division of the IRGC. So as we talk back to Trey, is there anything you'd like to add about this group that people should keep in mind if they want to see the Iranians take back their government? Don't you believe, Trey, this group's got to be neutralized?
Yeah, Brian, this is a really important part of the story that we are covering on the ground in Iran. When you look at Iran's IRGC, it's made up of 5 separate branches. We know about the Quds forces, President Trump ordering that targeted strike against Qasem Soleimani back in 2020. We know about their air force and ground forces. It's the Besieged forces, though, one of the branches that is responsible for the crackdown on protesters in Iran. One of the reasons that Operation Epic Fury began. We saw the attention shift back to Iran earlier this year when the Besieged forces went into the streets and directly confronted the pro-democracy protesters who were peacefully demonstrating in the streets of their country. President Trump believes 32,000 Iranian civilians were slaughtered, mainly by these forces, as they went on motorcycles and in cars and opened fire on demonstrators. And so there has been a concerted effort, I'm told, by intelligence officials here and in the United States to go after the leadership structure of the Besieged forces and their command and control centers. We saw earlier in Operation Epic Fury intense airstrikes against the...
Did y'all see that laser? Man, you see that, how that laser just went to work on that? That's that new United States weapon, man. Let me see if I can go back to that right quick. Let me see if I can go back to that right quick. Because them lasers, man. Look at them lasers.
To go after the leadership structure of the Besieged forces and their command and control centers. We saw earlier in Operation Epic Fury intense airstrikes against the capital of Tehran, taking out the command centers that they used to order the crackdown on protesters. And we expect the degrading of this part of the organization to continue in the days ahead, because the Israelis and the Americans want to create the conditions for the Iranian people, if they want to go to the streets in the days or weeks ahead, that they can do so. And they will have less security forces there. They will have a weakened structure that would allow them to demonstrate against the regime that we know has simply replaced the former supreme leader.
Hey, them lasers is tearing stuff up, bruh. Like, you ain't, I don't know if y'all can necessarily recognize it, but I can tell the difference. Them is laser weapons that these, whatever this artillery is getting hit with. I don't want to say artillery, but this military equipment is getting hit with. These planes, these tanks, whatever else got hit. These military trucks from the, that's coming from Iran. The United States is hitting these people with lasers, bruh.
With his son, Mujtaba Khamenei. This is a man who actually has very close ties to the Besieged forces. He was directed by his father in the past, even in 2009 during the Green Movement protests in Iran, to use these individuals to crack down on peaceful demonstrators. And so very big developments on the ground as the Israelis and Americans go after these headquarters, and we can expect more of the leadership structure of this wing of the IRGC to be taken out in the days ahead. Brian?
Great job, Trey.
Yeah, I'm reading about them that they monitor population for anti-government sentiment. They enforce the strict dress codes and social norms. They're the morality police, and they're criticized often. The group is widely criticized for using excessive, often lethal force against protesters, including torturing and killing detainees.
So the Israelis said they're looking to take them out. What they did to show that they're still a force when the war started, they set up checkpoints, and now we're bombing the checkpoints.
Taking them out. Decentralizing the coordination is going to making it hard for them to coordinate with one another is going to be make it easier for Israel and the United States to take all of those leaders out.
I'm pleased to report that earlier today, the International Energy Agency agreed to coordinate the release of a record 400 million barrels of oil from various national petroleum reserves around the world, which will substantially reduce the oil prices as we end this threat to America and this threat to the world. We don't want to leave early, do we? We got to finish the job, right?
Absolutely.
Basically, I believe you just got to just wait this thing out and just continue to do what you're doing besides thinking that you're going to send the ground troops into this country and, it have an effect to where, or an impact to where it allows you to win this war or this operation, because that's not going to happen. We don't want to send United States troops up in there. It was a cool idea when you had individuals like the Kurdish wanted to go up in there, but if you allow them to go up in there, then they gonna feel like they got a piece of the territory to necessarily control it. So I could say, Kuwait has been an ally, Saudi Arabia has been an ally. These individuals have been, you can see sending the ground troops up in there, but that's because that's on their side of the world. United States don't necessarily need to do all that, unless it is to provide the civilian population with some type of humanitarian assistance to where it becomes a drop-off point. But even that's kind of like scary, right? Because here you are, you don't know who is from who. I think we had to learn that experience when it came to Afghanistan. Hey.
The U.S. will tap into oil reserves in an effort to lower energy prices. But despite that, oil prices pressing higher at this hour, as the State Department warns Iran could be planning attacks on American oil and energy infrastructure over in Iraq. This after the IRGC claimed responsibility for firing on ships in the Strait of Hormuz. KT McFarland served as Deputy National Security Advisor to President Trump and joins us now. The only ships getting through there are Iranian vessels. Why are we letting Iran be able to ship oil to China? Why don't we stop that? We're pretty good at stopping barges. I'm sure you've seen it in Venezuela.
Yeah, we're pretty good at dealing with the Strait of Hormuz. We've been dealing with that going back to the Reagan administration, where we stopped those vessels going through. The president has said that the United States could escort our tankers through, the United States Navy. And he's also said that we, the United States, could insure. The problem is insurance. They can't get insurance because it's a war zone. We would give them the insurance. But he hadn't done either of those things yet. And what happens is Iran is letting ships go through, tankers go through, that are Iranian tankers, that are illegal ghost tankers. And the tankers just say, hey, we're on our way to China, don't bother us. And so Iran lets them through.
So that may be a reason to go in to send ground troops up in there for. You know what I'm saying? To get ready to take over all these oil tankers that the Iranians are letting through, because what the what the United States can definitely do is take control of the oil that is coming or leaving on these oil tankers, these Iranian oil tankers. That is a good reason to have some United States troops over there in Iran for.
We could stop this. We just haven't done it so far. I would urge the president to, if he wants to keep the Strait of Hormuz open, do it quicker. Do it sooner rather than later.
KT, it seems like so many of the president's objectives have been reached. But the question is, how much of their interior Gestapo-like forces, the besieged, have to be destroyed before the people of Iran rise up? Being that we haven't really armed them yet, and the Iranian government doesn't let them have any arms.
We're working our way down the target list, and the initial target list was the Navy, the Air Force, the command and control centers, the senior tier of leadership of the Revolutionary Guard and of the government. But what we haven't gone after are these besieged. And you're right; these are thugs. These are guys on motorcycles that are thugs. And this is the internal. They're not even a regular police. They're just gangs. And they go into towns, into regions, into remote areas, and they arrest women without headscarves, bring them into jail, rape them, and beat them. That's the besieged. And until somebody gets a hold of the besieged, whether it is the Israelis bomb their headquarters, whether it is the government itself, potentially a new Iranian government that goes after the besieged is a cancer within. And until they're dealt with, then I don't think you're going to see a lot of people going back out into the streets, except people who are knowing they're going to die because the besieged are going to just tackle them, arrest them, beat them, torture them, kill them.
Right. We killed their commander. We're killing a lot more. And the Israelis' intelligence on the ground is unbelievable. Hopefully that leads to grabbing that uranium out of some of those destroyed sites. Maybe that'll be something that'll be announced shortly. Let's talk about oil. They think their greatest offense is getting oil up to $200 a barrel. Here's Energy Secretary Chris Wright on what we're doing.
We are every hour of every day degrading their military ability to threaten ships in the Straits of Hormuz. We will release collectively 400 million barrels. This is to tide the world over while these flows are restricted by Iran. But ultimately, the United States military will prevail. We will end their ability to impede traffic through the Straits of Hormuz, and ships will flow again.
And Donald Trump just opened back up a pipeline that's in California. So, you know, hopefully that works out too. I know Gavin Newsom is definitely against that. You know, says his concerns is for the reason how back in the day, I think cars have become that much more efficient in terms of polluting the air, not polluting the air. I don't think we will see the smog that was in the air where you see like the next, 20 miles down the road, it was, looking gloomy orange and stuff like that, right? I think cars have become a better with the pollution of the air, even though it's not, foolproof, right? However, besides these reserves, the pipeline in California has definitely opened back up because refineries, I think we have like 3 major companies that have stayed within California, have stayed committed to California while going through all this idea of, the big green scam. However, with energy being so important and how if the big green scam was actually to be able to come alive, what you will have is you will have, like Donald Trump said, you have so many, renewable energies, but would that necessarily cover California to where, it would just look, this in disarray, basically. One thing about oil is that it's not out there in plain sight, right? Like if I were to, solar panels was one thing, right? But the energy companies was starting to kind of renege on the whole idea with regards to having solar panels on your roof. And because you were connected to the utility, right? Your solar panels were connected to the utility plants itself to where that, an inspector would come, they would come check out and hook your solar panels up to the utility so that your solar panels was kind of like, or the utility was kind of like the reserve, right? And your solar panels will be the primary source of how you will get power, to your home. And that's primarily during the daytime if you didn't have batteries. Batteries would help you store energy all day and have power also at night. But once the sun goes down, here you are, you're counting on the utility plants. The utility was starting to trying to make it a greater attempt to make money off your ability to have solar panels up on your roof. And instead of costing you less, what was starting to happen was the utility was starting to charge you more charging more in order to save themselves.
We released some from our strategic oil reserve, and so did 32 other countries. That's a pretty good adaptation. It doesn't show defection.
Yeah, but it's a temporary fix. You've got to deal with Iran's ability to use oil as blackmail, whether it's blocking the Strait of Hormuz or whether it's going after energy sites around the region that other countries own, targeting other countries' energy sites. We have yet to target the Iranian energy sites, to a certain extent. Now, why is that? Because I think we're still hoping that we could work with a new Iranian government that would then rely on those oil refineries, the oil extraction, the oil bases to have them intact to work with. But that's still on our target list. So we could do a whole lot more damage to Iran than we've done, and we've got plenty of time to do it. Yeah. I think that the initial objectives have been met. No nukes, no missiles, no force of proxies endangering the Middle East. Now, what we've got to do is do the next tier of targets, which is open the Strait of Hormuz, making sure the oil flows, getting rid of the besiege. And it depends on President Trump. He could leave tomorrow and say, I've committed the job. I'll be back in a couple of years as Iran rebuilds its military, its nuclear sites, and we'll mow the grass again. But I think President Trump has made the decision he wants to deal with it once and for all.
One of the things he said is, I don't want to leave it for the next person, no matter who the president is. Don't want to leave it for them. I want to handle it now. And every other administration knew there were a problem. Yeah. Only this Democratic Party is not admitting it now. Hopefully people will not fall for that. KT McFarland, thanks so much.
To have the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Michael Waltz, with us here. You can talk about any issue. Let's start with this big one. President Trump and Peter Doocy had an exchange yesterday about the war. Watch here.
You just said it is a little excursion, and you said it is a war. So which one is it?
Well, it's both. It's both. It's an excursion that will keep us out of a war. For them, it's a war. For us, it's turned out to be easier than we thought.
Especially with them laser weapons. They ain't got nothing on them laser weapons. The way them things was posting, them things work a lot more better than I thought.
But think of it, they had thousands of missiles, 7,000, 8,000 missiles. We got many of them before they got to launch. They have drones all over the place. We got many. Now we're knocking out the drone plants. They started talking about mines, so we hit 28 mine ships as of this moment, 28. Using the same weapon, the exact same weapon that we use against the drug dealers.
So over at the United Nations, what word do you use to describe what's happening right now?
Len, let's talk about them ammunitions they got. Why they got so much ammunition still?
Well, what I've been using over and over again and pointing out to all of the members there is that this war started 1979, started 47 years ago, and President Trump is no longer going to just absorb these attacks, whether it's the terrorist proxies, Hezbollah, Houthi, Hamas, or attacks on infrastructure, or you name it, the malicious activity that Iran has been up to. He's not going to kick the can anymore. He's going to end it. But can I just say that, looking at Trey Yangst and others and what they're going through, the Iranian strategy of sowing chaos, shooting in all directions, hitting its Gulf neighbors, even hitting countries as far away as Turkey and Azerbaijan is absolutely backfiring. Yesterday in the UN and the Security Council, we had a historic day in the sense that all of the GCC countries, led by Bahrain, uniformly and publicly denounced Iran. They were co-sponsored. This resolution was co-sponsored by a UN record 135 other nations.
We actually have that map. If you could pull it up there while we're speaking. This is the call for number 3, please. This is the map of the countries on the UN resolution. This is unusual, to say the least.
Well, and here's why it's so significant. Number one, many of these countries have taken kind of a neutral position over the years when it comes to Iran. Qatar, for example, shares a massive gas field, the Pars gas field, with Iran that stretches across the straits there. UAE has a massive free trade zone of Iranian goods. Oman was just mediating and providing the kind of neutral actor for us during the negotiations that Iran never approached in good faith. They are all now standing strong. They are all uniformly, I got to tell you, and talking to them on a personal level, furious, outraged. And the fact that Iran is hitting hotels, resorts, ports, their shipping, all of those, their airports, all of those civilian infrastructure has them squarely aligned with the United States. And if you look at it, it's really kind of the Abraham Accords coalition that's now in action, and now it's unified. And the other important thing yesterday, is both China and Russia, fair weather friends that they are, they abstained. They backed away. They didn't oppose it, and they could have vetoed.
We've heard.
It's the same how Iran got fooled into believe that China and Russia was a friend just because, they were, I guess because they was against America, but China was definitely being abusive, and Russia was even, I can't say that Russia was worse. They both was one and the same, how Russia pretty much stole Iran's whole drone manufacturing. And that's what's being used out there in Iran. They took the Iranian drone, which you identify that Iranians are very smart people because the drones that they have, Russian are using for their capabilities to defeat the Ukraine in the Russian-Ukraine war. They took their technology after ordering thousands of these drones from Iran, took their technology, didn't pay them for it, and ended up making them drones themselves. China is trying to gain influence, and I don't know how and why when it's a Muslim country or China want to gain influence. And the only thing that I can say, because China was giving the Iranians so much artillery that China was most definitely trying to use Iran as a launch point to attack America.
President Trump say that the U.S. has already won, that this is over. He said yesterday, quote, it's easier than we thought it would be. Does he risk putting himself into a corner at all by saying that, though? I mean, especially with these new images overnight, the Strait of Hormuz is there's still bombs going off, there's still ships getting hit.
Yeah, but look, if you look at the military objectives that he laid out, Secretary Hegseth has laid out from the very beginning, command and control decimated, 3 layers down. Ballistic missile, both production and current. We've seen a 92% drop off. If you look at their nuclear program, not only their enrichment is obliterated, we're hitting other key aspects of it as well. And I could tell you, interestingly, remember the Houthis that were firing at every ship out there? Incredibly quiet. They don't dare, given what they suffered last year, start firing at us. Hezbollah completely degraded, as is Hamas and the other terrorist proxies as well. So what we saw again in the council yesterday were countries like Syria and Lebanon and others that have been under Iran's thumb for so many years are now saying, are now throwing off that yoke. And
let me actually show you call for number.
Transform the Middle East.
Yeah, let me show you.
So like I said, it's a good day. It has been a good thing for the Middle East. I'm glad that Donald Trump decided not to go ahead and attack the energy plants, because that would be kind of like a drawback from us being able to actually get this thing over with, and it will actually have, kind of force some of these Iranian young adults to enter the war, I believe, because when you look at the children and the women that is suffering dramatically from, just not having energy, the displacement, the loss of communication between families, man, that would be a hard pill to swallow, a hard pill for a young adult male to swallow. I'm gonna end it right there. Most definitely, I just want to give you a little spiel of what regards. I was hoping that he was going to get into this whole, where are they getting all these weapons from? I thought y'all was knocking this stuff back, and apparently they are still launching missiles. And apparently now Donald Trump at this current moment has a ceasefire so they could begin negotiations. But who knows how this is going to last, because I believe that whoever you're negotiating with is still in some form or fashion. They're going to want to have a Navy. They're going to want to have a military. They are not going to want to relinquish any power to the United States or Israel. Tiny Cross-H.U.G on the Trumped Up Live Show, man. It's a good day to be a soldier.
Call for number 4.